En primer lugar, Eduardo Montes, presidente de UNESA, Jessica Fries, directora de Prince Accounting for Sustainability Project y de International Integrated Reporting Committee, Lee Watson, Chief Producer Officer de XBRL Internacional, Manuel Ortega, jefe de la Central de Balances del Banco de España, Tomás Conde, director de Sostenibilidad de BBVA, y Pedro Rivero, presidente de la Comisión de Responsabilidad Social Corporativa de AECA. Voy a moderar yo, José Luis Lizcano, director gerente de AECA y miembro de la ponencia sobre Información Corporativa Integrada, que en el seno de la Asociación se ha empezado a desarrollar. Formo parte de la ponencia junto con Francisco Flores, de la Universidad de Huelva, y con Manuel Rejón, de Gramaudit, ambos presentes en la sesión. Tendremos ocasión de hablar de ese proyecto que tiene en marcha la asociación ya hace algunas semanas, en el que además se encuentran representados y participan en la discusión de los trabajos que se están acometiendo por distintas organizaciones de carácter oficial, sectorial, privado y también de carácter académico y expertos, algún experto internacional. Luego, como digo, tendremos ocasión de hablar un poco más en profundidad de ese proyecto de la asociación. Bueno, el simposio, el formato de la sesión es el siguiente. Va a haber una primera parte expositiva en donde los invitados, los ponentes invitados, van a contar con 8 o 10 minutos cada uno para presentar los aspectos fundamentales de sus organizaciones relacionados con el lema y el objetivo del simposio. Y una segunda parte que será en formato coloquio, en donde, bueno, pues sobre la base de algunas preguntas que se han seleccionado y las que se puedan plantear por los presentes en la sala, pues estableceremos y pondremos en común algunas ideas que no hayan podido ser presentadas en las exposiciones o se quieran desarrollar. Entonces, bueno, pues con esa idea y sin intención de ocupar más tiempo, por mi parte, vamos a iniciar esa primera parte expositiva con la presentación de Eduardo Montes, presidente de UNESA. Cuando quieras, Eduardo.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. A mí este tema me parece que es un tema absolutamente fundamental y me lo parece desde hace años, ¿no? De hecho, siendo yo presidente de Siemens España, pues creamos el Club de Excelencia en Sostenibilidad, que sigue a día de hoy reuniendo al 30% del PIB español. Por ejemplo, las compañías eléctricas pues están 3 de las grandes, hay bancos, hay de todo. Y el objetivo fundamental es impulsar lo que es la sostenibilidad en las empresas desde un triple punto de vista. Sostenibilidad económica, que es fundamental, sostenibilidad medioambiental y, desde luego, sostenibilidad desde el punto de vista de buen gobierno corporativo, transparencia, responsabilidad social, ¿no? Al final, lo que es responsabilidad social, buen gobierno corporativo, transparencia, yo siempre lo he definido. Yo presidí este club hasta mi entrada en UNESA y me tocó definir una serie de cosas. Yo esto lo definía como ser un buen ciudadano, un buen vecino de tu entorno. Es decir, lo fundamental es que en el entorno donde una empresa se mueva sea agradable para el resto y sea un buen ciudadano. Eso es ahora más importante que nunca, porque el papel de las compañías está variando de una manera importantísima. ¿Y por qué está variando? Pues no sé si van a poner las transparencias que traje, pero sería bueno, porque sí. No hay nada peor que seguir un guión basado en unas transparencias que nadie ve.
Sí, pensaba, pues...
Bueno,
las pones.
El hecho es que ha cambiado el concepto de empresa y su misión por varios motivos. El primer motivo es porque el mundo es global, y es global de verdad. Porque el mundo siempre ha pretendido ser global. Ha habido cantidad de viajes de mandatarios, incluso desde la Edad Media, pero ahora es global de verdad. Y es global porque los transportes lo permiten, y es global porque los sistemas de información lo permiten, y es global porque la mentalidad de nuestra gente lo permite. Y es rarísimo encontrar a alguien que no hable al menos su propio idioma y otro más. Esto hace que las compañías ya no son de un sitio, son de todas partes. Las compañías que represento yo, por ejemplo, pues tanto Iberdrola como Endesa como tal, están en medio mundo y de hecho son españolas, no tiene la más mínima importancia. Lo que sí es verdad es que son tan grandes, generan un flujo tan enorme de flujo económico, flujo de personas que son ciudadanos del mundo, y esto hace que su papel tenga una importancia crucial, afectando en la política de los estados de una manera trascendente. Yo he tenido la suerte no solo de ser presidente de Siemens España, sino vicepresidente de Siemens AG, y ver una compañía con 500.000 personas que está en 193 países, que es tantos como la ONU a día de hoy, antes de la entrada o no entrada del último miembro, que es Palestina, que ahí está. Y desde luego, la importancia que tiene una compañía como Siemens es muy superior a la que tienen muchos estados. Esto hace que su papel sea diferente, y esto hace que temas como la transparencia, temas como el buen gobierno corporativo, temas como la responsabilidad social, ya sean patrimonio, no de países, no de estados, sino del mundo empresarial. Y esto hace que haya cambiado de una manera fundamental. Y además yo creo que este simposio llega en un momento adecuado. Estamos en un momento de crisis mundial gravísima. Yo he discutido muchas veces si empezó como una crisis financiera o económica, me da exactamente igual. La verdad es que es una crisis de valores en muchos casos. Y muchas de las cosas que están pasando es porque esta transparencia, que es absolutamente necesaria y que genera confianza, no se ha dado. Entonces, ante la opacidad, la gente reacciona con miedos, con prevención. La transparencia, el decir las cosas como son, el mostrar realmente lo que tienes, en el fondo lo único que genera es reputación corporativa. Y a día de hoy, si hay un valor importante para una empresa, es la reputación corporativa. Va mucho más allá de su balance, va mucho más allá de la cuenta de resultados, y en la transparencia siguiente tendré ocasión de comentar. Bueno, el tema es que la pregunta es si los sistemas tradicionales de información son suficientes. Desde el punto de vista, la respuesta es no. Ni son suficientes como sistemas de información, ni son suficientes por sus contenidos. Es decir, a día de hoy, punto 1, los sistemas de información tienen que revelar en tiempo real no solo los estados financieros de las compañías, sino otra serie de valores de las compañías. Yo recuerdo en el año 96-97, siendo presidente de Siemens España, que fue la primera compañía de nuestro país que publicó una triple memoria al final del año. Por un lado, la memoria que nos exigía la legislación española. Cuenta de resultados, balance, cash flow, origen y aplicación de fondos. Segundo, una memoria medioambiental. Cómo esta compañía añade valor al medio ambiente. Y tercero, una memoria de responsabilidad social corporativa y de buen gobierno corporativo. Es curioso porque para daros idea, me vais a permitir que os trate de tú, Siemens reunía todas las condiciones para no ser buen reputada o bien reputada. ¿Por qué? Multinacional, compañía puramente industrial, metida en nichos de mercado donde no era conocida, como es el BBVA o como son el Corte Inglés, Zara, lo que sea, ¿no? Bueno, pues pasamos del puesto 100 y pico en el monitor español de reputación corporativa al puesto número 9, siendo la primera compañía industrial, la primera tecnológica y la primera multinacional. Pues esto que parecía una cosa, un lujo cultural para neutrales, y siento que el traductor tenga ahora que abordar esa frase, repercutió en que pudiéramos vender cosas tan importantes como el AVE Madrid-Barcelona, o tan importantes como la red de hospitales de la Comunidad de Madrid. La competencia era igual que nosotros, los precios seguros eran los mismos, los productos los mismos, la reputación de la compañía ayudó de una manera fundamental. Es curioso porque al hilo de esto, el mundo ha cambiado de una manera radical y ha cambiado en muy poquito tiempo. Hace no más de 15 años, cuando se valoraba una compañía, se valoraba el 80% eran sus tangibles, el valor en libros, y el 20% eran los intangibles. Casi el único intangible era el fondo de comercio, clientes, relación con proveedores, etc. A día de hoy, la valoración de una compañía, el 80% son intangibles y el 20% son tangibles. Fijaros que, por desgracia, porque cuando yo comentaba esto hace 3 años, lo comentaba en positivo, ahora lo comento en medio negativo. Ayer, compañías extraordinarias de todo el mundo, y desde luego de este país, habían registrado caídas en bolsa en el entorno, en los últimos 2 meses, al 30%. Ni su valor en libros había empeorado. Sus resultados eran probablemente mejores que hace 3 años. Y habían tenido que reducir personal. Simplemente la reputación, la apreciación que teníamos de ellas era suficiente como para que superara ese intangible la realidad. Y eso es lo que está pasando. ¿Y por qué está pasando esto? Y vuelvo a la transparencia. Porque yo creo que no hemos sido capaces de transmitir a los mercados, y los mercados somos todos, de transmitir a esos mercados la realidad de nuestras compañías, la realidad de nuestra economía, la realidad de nuestra industria. Pero fijaros lo importante que es. Un intangible como puede ser el miedo a lo que pueda pasar vale mucho más que el valor en libros. Hoy en día, en el IBEX 35, si cogemos la mayoría de las empresas, el valor en bolsa, que es el valor que estaríamos dispuestos a pagar por esa compañía, es inferior a lo que vale el balance de esa compañía. Es decir, si yo compro ahora mismo, no menciona a nadie, cualquier compañía del IBEX, al precio que se están vendiendo las acciones, y luego la vendo, simplemente vendiendo los activos ganaría dinero. Lo cual es, por un lado, tremendo, pero por otro lado, refuerza absolutamente el planteamiento que estamos haciendo hoy. Si pasamos a la siguiente. Bueno, la empresa de hoy requiere algo que va más allá de lo que es la simple información. Es curioso porque hasta hace poco la información que se daba en el Consejo de Administración iba mucho más allá que la que se daba en la Junta General de Accionistas, aunque solo sea porque la Junta no tenía, digamos, la capacidad de decisión que tenía el Consejo de Administración. A día de hoy eso ha variado de manera fundamental. ¿Por qué? Pues porque en las Juntas Generales va la gente bien preparada y el que no va la sigue vía Internet. Y al final nos hemos dado cuenta de que quien manda en las compañías son los accionistas y no los consejeros o los ejecutivos. A pesar de todo, ahora hay que ir un paso más allá. Y el paso más allá es un paso no solo de transparencia, sino de intercambio de cooperaciones con lo que los ingleses, los americanos, que son geniales, siempre tienen palabras que representan mucho y que son imposibles de traducir. Una idea es stakeholder. Yo llevo años intentando traducir lo que es un stakeholder y no lo he conseguido. Pues grupo de interés o algo de esto. Pero en román paladino, los stakeholders son aquellas entidades, grupos, personas que influyen y se ven influidas por la empresa que uno representa. Y son los sindicatos, no desde el punto de vista de negociadores sindicales, sino de miembros de la sociedad. Son las ONGs, son los consumidores, son por supuesto los proveedores, desde luego los clientes, desde luego los empleados, las administraciones. Pues este diálogo con todos estos grupos de interés es absolutamente fundamental para la reputación corporativa de la compañía y sobre todo para saber lo que tenemos que hacer. El diálogo con los clientes, las compañías llevan muchísimos años haciendo. Uno discute con los clientes qué debería de hacer para satisfacerlos y lo intenta hacer. Uno discute con los empleados exactamente igual. Pero nos hemos olvidado que la sociedad es absolutamente fundamental y hay que saber lo que esa sociedad exige de nosotros y lo que nosotros podemos hacer para satisfacer a esa sociedad. Porque, repito, volviendo al principio de esta breve exposición, al final lo que pretendemos las compañías es jugar un papel en la sociedad de buena vecindad para ser aceptados. Y el ser aceptados es una enorme ventaja competitiva. yo siempre lo comparo con lo que pasa en una comunidad de vecinos, ¿no? Imaginaros el vecino pues, que deja la basura en la puerta, que se olvida de pagar los gastos de comunidad, que deja el ascensor con la puerta abierta, pues probablemente sea muy mal recibido y tenga muy pocas posibilidades de conseguir cosas de los demás. Yo recuerdo, yo viví una temporada larga en Inglaterra, en una zona maravillosa, al lado de Cambridge, y claro, yo no estaba acostumbrado a tener una casa con un jardín, y no se me había ocurrido que el césped hay que cortarlo, y además tampoco sabía hacerlo en aquel momento. Entonces yo me daba cuenta que después de un mes allí, a mí no me saludaba nadie. Y yo tenía ganas de que me invitaran a tomar un café, y tal, hasta que la vecina de al lado le dijo a mi mujer, señor Montes, no le pueden saludar a usted. Usted lleva un mes sin cortar el césped. Esto es una deshonra para el barrio. Entonces corté el césped y en ese momento he sido mucho mejor aceptado. Bueno, pues esto es exactamente lo mismo. ¿Y cuál es el límite para aquello en lo que la reputación corporativa, en lo que la transparencia informativa, en lo que el diálogo con los stakeholders no llega? La ética. Al final todo esto va de personas. Cuando llegamos al límite de la reputación corporativa, lo que tenemos que exigir a nuestros ejecutivos, a nuestros empleados, a nuestro entorno es comportamientos éticos. Y yo creo que lo que ha pasado en esta crisis, que no le vemos fin, es, entre otras cosas, la primera es caída de un ciclo económico, pero además falta de transparencia, opacidad, falta de transmisión de valores, y sobre todo el poner en entredicho, quizá por la ética de algunas personas, algunos estamentos, el poner en entredicho un sistema que durante muchísimos años ha funcionado, ha generado riqueza y ha generado empleo.
Muchas gracias, Eduardo. Y a continuación, pues tiene la palabra Jessica Fries, directora del International Integrated Reporting Committee.
mow my lawn sufficiently, despite being English and having a lawn. Is this okay? Yeah. Great. So I'm the director of the International Integrated Reporting Committee and Accounting for Sustainability, which is a project that the Prince of Wales set up, and Accounting for Sustainability in collaboration with a vast number of other organisations internationally established the IIRC about a year ago, so in August last year. And the committee really brings together a lot of the key international organisations, including the International Accounting Standards Board, FASB, IOSCO from a securities regulator's perspective, as well as investor network organisations, companies, and other key stakeholders. And what we sought to do with the committee is bring together as many of the key players from different parts of reporting, whether from the financial reporting perspective, management reporting, sustainability reporting, to look at the question of integrated reporting and how these different strands of information needed to come together to provide a more coherent picture of an organisation. We've just released a discussion paper which sets out in more detail what I'm just going to talk you through very briefly now. I'm happy to answer any questions when we have the discussion, but also there's more information available should you be interested, and we would welcome anyone to give comments as part of the consultation process. So moving on to the first slide. There are three things that I'm going to touch on. Firstly, the discussion paper as a whole and why for us integrated reporting is so important, what it is for us. Touch on the framework or the proposals for the framework that we've set out in the discussion paper, and then touch briefly on the pilot programme, which is starting next month, and we have some good representatives from the pilot programme here. And that is really intended to build out in a very practical way integrated reporting, test it, develop it further, towards the publication of an international framework with that kind of support and practical experience integrated in 2 years' time. So as I said, the discussion paper was launched actually, this is very timely, so last week. There is a 3-month comment period, so until mid-December. As has been highlighted already, one of the key drivers for us is a changing sense of value. What is a company's value? And very much a trend towards broader factors being key to understanding that value. In line with that, a change of stakeholders in the outside world is a key determinant not only of financial value but also of the ability of the company to sustain in the long term. To put integrated reporting in context, this slide highlights just a few of the global macro trends that are really shaping the world over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And one of the key themes in the report is that the world has changed. Again, a point ably highlighted in the previous discussion. Not only increasing population, a shift in terms of where economic growth is being driven from, to the Asian markets and the BRICS more generally, a shift in where consumption is, but some very real constraints from an environmental, from a social perspective that if companies and others within the world don't respond to, that will be a key inhibitor of growth, of prosperity going forwards. Now these trends are really putting a lot of pressure on companies and other organisations to be reporting an increasing amount of information. You can see, and this is just looking at financial reporting, so the annual report as a whole. One example, but from the research that we've done and had commissioned, this is a pattern across the world, so in all countries, of really an explosion in the length of reports. And from our perspective, we would argue that this length of information, while necessary to understand the complexity of different factors impacting an organisation, can actually reduce transparency and reduce the amount of insight that you can have into an organisation. You have too much information, and you can't really, in a snapshot, see what the key drivers for company value are, and what will be the determinants of longer-term success. In the context of companies globally, reporting any kind of non-financial information at all, any environmental, social or governance information. So how can you resolve these two tensions, both a driver for more and more information, both from stakeholders, from the markets, from regulators, and this increasing length and complexity of reporting? We would see integrated reporting as seeking to provide a pathway, a way of balancing these two different drivers and this tension. Now here, this is just a fairly simple snapshot of how we would see reporting having evolved, really starting with relatively small, concise financial statements, a growing volume of reporting, and what we have summarised as really four key areas of reporting that you can characterise information falling within. So the financial statements, corporate social responsibility, citizenship reports. But what we would say or argue, and the evidence demonstrates, is that reports in each of these areas has grown in volume, both in terms of hard copy reports, additional information prepared online and released online. But that there are real connections between performance in one area and that in another that are not highlighted by the current reporting structure. So really these four strands of reporting have to a large degree grown up in silos, often with information duplicated between the different reports, but the threads of how performance to move towards a much more integrated picture, taking apart those silos and looking at how they can be reformed to really understand how information from the company, how it is managed, and how that can be reflected in terms of its external disclosures. We would see them moving towards a much more concise, smaller core report or integrated reporting, and of course a need for different stakeholders to be able to drill down into the areas that are linked to this. We would say that there needs to be development on an international scale, particularly for multinational companies, but increasingly in the global world that we operate. It's important to be able to compare between countries, between organisations in different countries. So increasing harmonisation is quite important. Similarly, as understanding of the different impacts and issues affecting companies grows, an ability to be able to understand those linkages in a much more coherent way, which is one of the key drivers that there are the number of organisations there are around the International Integrated Reporting Committee. In this development, we've really sought to build on the existing platforms and the information that is already in place. So as an example of that, we've been working, as I say, with the IASB and others from a financial reporting perspective, but also in terms of sustainability reporting. GRI have recently announced the G4 development of their new framework, and integrated reporting again is a key plank of that, to very explicitly look at how the information in sustainability. So something that is quite ambitious if you were to really adopt it all now. And I think there are few, if any, companies around the world that could really say, you know, we are doing integrated reporting at the moment. So it's really a journey, and how different companies get to that end point will differ. So within the framework, we have sought to set out what that end vision could look like, but recognising that different companies will be starting from different bases, and really to enable that journey to unfold. Within the discussion paper, we felt it was quite important to look at what the benefits and challenges for different groups were. Now, from some of the consultations that we've done, and we've done roundtables around the world to inform the framework and the discussion paper, there were actually surprising common benefits and challenges perceived by different stakeholder groups, and the majority were common. But we have divided this into a number of broad stakeholders over the next 2 years, informed by the pilot programme and by the consultation. The IIRC will be working towards development of an international integrated reporting framework. This framework is already recognised in South Africa, where it's part of the mandatory reporting requirements through the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and there are a number of other regulators around the world that are adopting integrated reporting requirements and recommendations. So we're working with regulators to seek to enable that to happen in a coherent way and aligned across different jurisdictions. And similarly, we're keen to get input from as number of different stakeholder groups and countries, different types of organisations as possible. Touching briefly on the framework, there are a few areas of integrated reporting that we would see as really different. One of the most fundamental, and I won't go through all of these now, but one of the most fundamental is about thinking. So what we would like to see is within the reporting and the accounting information much closer to how the integrated thinking within the organisation and how that drives the reporting. Similarly, stewardship. So it really tends to focus on the past and on financial information to something that gives much better insights about the future and the future direction. A longer term horizon, and something much more strategic in its core and in its focus. I've touched on technology enabled being one of the key areas that will really enable integrated reporting to come to life, and I think XBRL and developments there will be an important enabler. One other thing not drawn out here, but highlighted by this diagram, is that sense that the entity is no longer has the same boundaries as in the past, and really the organisation is very much interdependent with the external world. We have introduced the concept of different types of capitals, and of course how these capitals interrelate. So financial, but also intellectual, natural, social, human capital, and how these are relevant to the organisation. We would encourage organisations to be focusing on the things that are important to them, so it's very much a framework that is not one size fits all, and that is looking at what is the most relevant, most material factors for the organisation itself. Yeah. So this is an illustration of the key building blocks within the framework. Within the slides in the discussion paper, we talk about what these key elements are, but they really build on the points that I've discussed before. And a set of core elements of information and some principles.
Seguidamente, Liquason de XVI Internacional hará su presentación.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today, and these topics that we're talking about, stakeholder engagement, social responsibility, reporting, and the changing world, is something of very strong interest to me. But we are here in a country, Spain, who's kind of been one of the leaders in these initiatives all along, so I don't feel like I'm the expert in the room, but rather in a room with people that has been the leaders of this for many years. So with that, that's quite an honor. I'm going to go and talk about the argument that, first of all, I believe very strongly that we need an integrated reporting framework. I will also reference what Jessica just said, which I'm a true believer on, that too much information brings less transparency. And with more and more disclosure being required on the companies, we need to start thinking about providing this information in an electronic format to make that information machine readable. Because there's only so many hours a day where we can look at PDF files, Word documents, or any other digital format or paper format before our eyes starts to glaze over. So we must make this information electronic in a machine-readable way. And that will be my argument today. Just quickly, XBRL, and of course, once again, I'm among peers here. XBRL stands for Extensible Business Reporting, and you've been a major driver of this already in Spain. So I don't want to go into too much information about the XBRL, but myself, I'm one of the founders and now Chief Product Officer. Now, I want to start talking about what I look at, kind of the journey of integrated reporting. And it starts with an integrated thinking. And with an integrated thinking, you start thinking about what does it really mean? What's material? What should be disclosed? What's material to Coca-Cola might be, access to water and not draining all of the water, but it means kind of nothing to a service organization. So we need to start thinking about what's material, what needs to be, and an integrated reporting framework needs to be in place, because just disclosing information, if it's not comparable and accessible, it really doesn't mean much. Then you started talking about integrated management. And if you look at the historical aspect of social responsibility reporting, it was generally something that somebody did on the side. It was not part of the integrated part of the management. The CEO or the CFO was seldom involved. Now we start seeing that changing when management comes together and starts saying there is material impact on the financial future of this company, and we need to start integrating that, looking more into the future of the company. So that's that integrated management. Then we start looking at integrated processes, and when you start looking at integrated processes, you need to start looking at how do you process this information. It isn't just bad enough that you have to collect all of the financial information that lives in an ERP system, but now you're going to also aggregate non-financial information, and how do this technically, can you do that? And I can stand here today as one of the founders of XBRL. Almost 80% of the capital markets right now are in XBRL reporting their financials. Why would non-financial come in another standard? So I'm advocating to continue one standard, XBRL, for the solution. Then you start, which I differentiate between integrated reporting versus an integrated report. Because in the process of integrated reporting, this whole concept of stakeholder engagement, that you go out, get the community involved, try to understand who is really the stakeholders. Because we are going beyond thinking just about shareholders to stakeholders, and the stakeholder is anybody that has an influence. To my grandmother who got influence when BP's oil spill happened in America. So this integrated reporting is more about little information that you go and get feedback, and then you take the feedback from the stakeholder and become an integrated report. So I actually look at it as 2 steps before you get to that integrated report, but this whole cycle needs to be in place. I'm in the process of writing this white paper with Brad Monterio and myself as a part of XBRL best practices, which will be a message to the integrated reporting project and its voluntary program. Now I want to talk about the information age. If we don't put XBRL into it, we are just going to bring less transparency because nobody is going to be able to digest it. In 2007, every year Harvard Business Review and the World Economic Forum comes forward with the top 20 ideas that impact management for the next future. And XBRL was one of them in 2007 as one of the ideas that would impact the management and companies. So XBRL has reached a kind of level in the world that it's getting to the point that I don't think there is no return. So let's talk about what it really needs. I know many of you know XBRL here, but I want to talk about this whole thing about creating information and linkages. You might know today that there are over 500 different frameworks, and I know GRI is one of them, but different certification, human rights. If you do business in California right now, a legislation was passed a few weeks ago that if you do business there, you have to disclose human rights. Have you used child labor? So if you do business there, you're going to have to disclose all of this additional information. There are about 500 frameworks. And my argument here today is we all need to come together because we have so many different data definition of standards or labels. So what does one mean when we mean human or child labor? Because it means different thresholds in different countries. We need to start building this kind of data repository. The other thing is we are global. We've been talking about that, and communication on this information needs to be in many different languages. Why not be able to create it in one language and communicate in others? It's not just the indicators that we report that needs to be XBRLized. It is also the references. Which references am I referring to? US GAAP in this instance, or which framework of social responsibility will we do? And then, of course, the validation of information, which is done through XBRL as a technology. My point is, if we don't make this information and take the time and the infrastructure to build these taxonomies, we are creating an alphabet soup, and all of these wonderful efforts that we have set the foundation for will not meet the needs of the 21st century. So, what do we need? Well, information, if you look at it, because we are listening to the investment community, contextual. Information needs to be contextual. It needs to be granular. It needs to be able to be extracted. Provide a common framework of definitions. Improve the accuracy, the quality, transparency. Enable easier comparison. Reduce reliance on normalized data, because today you get snippets of data when you use it and you usually buy it, and it really becomes just for the people that can afford it to be able to access this data. Now, XBRL meets all of those needs. However, we are creating another layer of framework now, and we are not making it digital. So my recommendation today is that we actually all come together for a summit, and the Spanish Institute would be a perfect, or the university, to get us all together early next year to actually come together and start agreeing on how to make it an approach. I also want to say very clearly, you have the business reporting process. In the reporting, companies are becoming data aggregators today, because now you've got to start collecting information from all of your suppliers. You're actually becoming a data aggregator yourself if you are going to put these laws, regulation, and voluntary framework that actually it's not how green you are, but it's as green as your supply chain is. And XBRL fits very much into that whole process. Now, if we are going to start creating this technology like cloud technology, where companies and individuals within the organization can collaborate to create one report, so that we need to take 2.0 other technology to be able to make this collaborated report, because if we are individuals all around the world creating the ultimate one report, we need to take advantage of advanced technology of collaboration like cloud technology, and once again, we are only as green as our supply chain. I am going to summarize what I believe needs to be the next steps. First of all, we need to create one common and exhaustive vocabulary. So similar to any other science like flora or anything, there was a process to create the classification system. We need to start that now, not 10 years from now. Create one common exhaustive vocabulary, either form a set of disclosure line item for corporate governance. We need to take this non-financial information and start looking at how do we extract and make that machine readable. We need to develop an XBRL ACROL. If you're going to have integrated reporting, you need to be able to roll this information up into one report. And then we need to organize in corporate governance and corporate social responsibility frameworks using cloud-based approach to create these taxonomies. And my final message is, and this goes to the organizer of this organization, who would be better to host this global summit where all key stakeholders come together, XBRL, integrated reporting, the academia, the members of the community, to actually set that roadmap to create machine-readable information, because we are not doing justice to the future generation by creating more burdensome reporting frameworks that sits locked up in PDF or other format that cannot be machine readable. And that is my argument, and I hope that you take that message further, and hopefully by the end of the day after lunch, we also set a date for a global summit. Thank you.
Manuel Ortega, del Banco de España, de la Central de Balance